Welcome to this week's xConnect Northwest, connecting you to the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills, and today we're joined by Anna King from Northwest News Network to discuss the Daughters of Hanford radio series. And before we get going, just a reminder that you at home can join in the conversation simply by connecting with us on Twitter at NWPTV or use hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, you can search for Northwest Public Television or by email at kwsutv@wsu.edu. And Anna, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I think before we get into what your project is all about, maybe we should start with a larger overview. A lot of varying degrees of knowledge that people have about Hanford itself. So why don't you give us a little bit of a history or just to outline exactly how it works with your show.
Sure. So this new project, which we're calling Daughters of Hanford, is a series of stories of 12 different women who have either been affected by the Hanford site or have caused change to the Hanford site. And we're just so excited to bring this new series to the radio and to the web. And later in July, this new story will be unveiled at the Hanford Reach Interpretive Center in Richland, Washington in July. Okay. And it will be like 12 beautiful portraits that will be shown at the Reach, as well as the audio stories that go with them. And so people can walk through the gallery and look at these women in these beautiful photographs and also hear their audio story right there in the museum.
Now, when people think of the Hanford site, no matter where they might be viewing from, they think maybe of different things. Some of them think of a Cold War situation in our production of plutonium for that, and for bombs, and for Cold War arsenal. Some of them think about World War II and effectively ending the war and the Manhattan Project, and other people might think about cleanup. So how does that all fit in with the people that you've chosen to be a part of your program?
Sure. We are focusing on kind of those three phases of the Hanford site. We had World War II, the Manhattan era, Project era. Before that, we even had Native American women who were very instrumental in the culture and the gathering of roots on the site. And then the Manhattan Project came in. And then we had the Cold War, where there was a big mass of plutonium produced on the site. And then we have the cleanup efforts that have started more recently and have provided tremendous amounts of work and complexities on the site as women work to clean that up along with their colleagues. And so we're happy to bring stories of all those types of women to this project.
So the title, Daughters of Hanford, has some double meaning, I understand. Can you shed some light on that for us?
It does. The name of the series kind of came from inspiration by me for the meaning, but then my husband really helped me wordsmith it. He's actually a scientist who works on the site. And he was telling me, you should name it, something to do with daughters or daughter products. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he was like, well, that means the isotopes that are formed by the radioactive decay of some other isotope. And so when I heard that, I was like, well, this is perfect because it's kind of the spin-off products of Hanford. If Hanford is the change, there's all these things around it that have happened that are the women of these stories. And so using Hanford as the nucleus, we're kind of exploring all of the different ways that the site looks, or some of the different ways that we look at the site through the lens of women. And these stories haven't been told as often or as loudly about women's contribution to the site. And I kept, kind of running into these stories on my work on other stories, and I would collect them in the back of my mind. And then eventually I just thought, I need to really tell these stories of these Hanford daughters, of these women. And so the official title of the project is called Daughters of Hanford, Products of a Southeast Washington Nuclear Reservation.
Which really even plays more into the double meaning in a sense. Have you found perhaps that while you have been working on talking to the different women who you've interviewed, that it really played out the way you thought it might when you were naming it, or did you wait and name it at the end?
I kind of came up with these different women in the back of my mind over a course of several years. As you know, I've been reporting here in the region for over a dozen years, and I've reported for radio on the Hanford Nuclear Reservation for about 8. And so after collecting a number of these women's stories in the back of my mind, I kept struggling for what to call it. And I'd have evening conversations with my husband, and I'd run on the river and kind of think about it. And then after we discussed it several times, this name kind of bubbled forth.
Right. So a long time coming, not just the program, but even just coming up with the name of it. That's extremely interesting.
The idea that the value of women at Hanford is going to be more public. I don't think the women who have participated in Hanford from World War II on have gotten the due that they deserve, frankly.
Now that was Susan Leckband that we were just listening to, one of the first women in your series, if I'm correct on that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, Susan Leckband is, a Midwestern gal. She grew up over in Iowa, and she came to the Hanford site and the community for a job at a telephone company, actually, in the Tri-Cities. And then very shortly after, she found herself working at Hanford, and her husband found a job there as well. And she just, was surrounded by this beauty of the desert, and she found herself kind of rooted here amid the sagebrush and the people here. And then eventually she started to volunteer at this 50th anniversary for the Hanford site. And when she volunteered there, she met some very interesting, workers from the original Manhattan Project as well as the Cold War era. And she was able, in a dinner with them, to just talk and to understand what they had given up to protect the country. And that just made her feel even more beholden to the cleanup task of working to clean up the Hanford Nuclear Reservation. And her story is beautiful. It's out on public radio right now. It's also at our site, which is daughtersofhanford.org. And just really happy with that story, and then looking forward to some of our next work.
How did you come up with the idea for the program, for the show?
I just kept kind of going out and doing stories at Hanford and working on all of these technical issues about the vitrification plant, which is a massive $12 billion plant that is supposed to clean up the tank waste at the Hanford site. And when I was out there, I saw like a woman foreman who was an electrician, and I just glanced at her as she was doing her regular job, and I thought, that's interesting. She's directing this large group of men and kind of working out at the site. And then I'd go somewhere else to like a cleanup meeting where top government officials were working on the solutions for this massive amount of waste that they're cleaning up. And there would be a woman explaining the tank waste and the complexities of the science of the waste. And I just thought, these are too good of stories just to kind of gloss over or to have one quote about them. And so this project really allows me to kind of delve into the people they are and the work they do and their belief system, what they want for the site, what they want for future generations, all in tightly packaged radio stories. And so it's just a way for me to focus on women a little bit more. And just a personal note, I come from a very strong family of women and women supporters, and my father and my grandfathers. And my great-grandmother came over on a boat from Sicily when she was just in her teens and made a life in America. And that's kind of the family I come from, that we have strong women and we support women in our family.
And you talked a little bit about it when you were describing seeing some of these women and what jobs they were doing. What types of women were you profiling, if you will, for your stories once you wanted to start putting this together? Were you choosing certain types of women in certain types of jobs, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, some of the women I just had met before, and I knew they had to be a part of the project. When I speak of that, I speak of Senator Patty Murray, who's part of our project and one of the daughters of Hanford, and she's brought millions of dollars to the site and fought for cleanup here over her long career as a United States senator. I have also been, looking at like a woman named Jane Hedges who runs the Department of Hanford at the Department of Ecology. And she's a very strong leader, and she is, really technical as far as knowing the amounts of waste and the kinds of waste that need to be cleaned up, and anything from trenches full of waste with gloves and outfits that are contaminated, all the way to the tank waste, which is 50 some odd million gallons of waste that is in underground tanks that are aging here at Hanford.
So where is it that we can see the full project? This is a project to be seen and heard, so where are we going to be able to see everything?
Yeah, so there's many opportunities to interact with this project. One is going to be that you can go to the actual Reach Interpretive Center in Richland, Washington in July and interact with the project one-on-one in a gallery setting. There will be large-scale photography that you'll be able to walk through and interact with and hear those audio stories on your iPad or your cell phone or a loaned iPad there at the site. And then there's also going to be our website, which will be continually updated throughout the project, and that's daughtersofhanford.org. And then you can also hear these stories on public radio throughout the Northwest, throughout Washington, Oregon, and Idaho on your local public radio station. And so and finally, we're going to have this geomapping application where if you drive by somewhere that is significant for a Daughters of Hanford story, if you have this application on your phone, which you can get through the Reach organization, you'll be pinged on your phone, and it'll show up on your phone different information about Daughters, audio stories, maybe even videos or some photography. So it'll be right out there in your world, not just in a museum.
Sure, yeah, and certainly it sounds on your smartphone and your computer and just about any of the places that we would now look for things like that. What was your inspiration here as we've just got a little bit of time left? What inspired you to get started on this? You talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but what's your inspiration?
Yeah, I would just say I have such strong women in my family again. My mother, my grandmother, my aunts, they all have encouraged me to go forward in my career and to pay attention to what women are saying in the world. And these women's stories haven't been told. Sometimes they're the ones doing the work, but they just haven't been in front of a microphone before to talk about it, or they haven't spoken as loudly about why they're inspired to do this work at Hanford. And those are the stories that we hope to uncover in this radio series and online project.
Great. What about Native Americans? Where do they play a part in your show?
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I've spent significant amount of time with Native American tribes throughout the region. I've been root picking, I've been berry picking in ceremonial pickings. I've also been in a sweat lodge ceremony and some other ceremonies that usually aren't open to outsiders. And so I really feel like I want to tell these Native American stories well. And in fact, we have several Native Americans that we're looking at for the project. One for sure is Natalie Swan. She's a member of the Yakima Nation, and she works on the treaty for the tribe as well as the Hanford cleanup. And she's kind of a biologist. She is a biologist, and she's a liaison between the tribe and the government agencies that work on cleanup at the site. And her photo has already been shot, and it's just gorgeous. She's in her traditional dress, and it's outdoors, and it's just really beautiful. And I'm excited to bring that story to the radio as we come through in the months ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Daughtersofhanford.org, certainly one of the places that you'll be able to access this, along with public radio. Thanks, Anna, very much for joining us today. It sounds like a great project. We look forward to seeing it ourselves.
Thank you for having me on, Greg.
And thank you at home for helping us out. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Remember, you can stay connected with us all week by tweeting us, liking us on Facebook, or adding us to your circle on Google+, or you can email us at kwsutv@wsu.edu and send us those show ideas. We'd love to hear from you. If you missed any part of today's show, don't worry. It'll be available online at nwptv.org. xConnect Northwest will be taking a break next week, but we'll be back on March 30th. You can join us along with Visit Tri-Cities as we'll talk about traveling opportunities in the greater Tri-Cities area. They'll join us live from our Richland studios at 2:30. If you have questions, feel free to connect with us online. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on air and online.